The Terminator, 1984 film directed by James Cameron, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton. One of the cinema classics, which everybody knows and that I have never actually seen before. This was my first time around, but a new one is in the works in the series, Dark Fate, and it's supposed to be a follow-up to just the first two films. So I went back to finally watch them, watch the original first and foremost, and see how it holds up. And the answer is pretty amazingly. The story, which I'm sure everyone knows, is that in the distant future there is a nuclear war triggered by machines, and the following fight between the remains of human civilization and those machines. The humans are led by John Connor, and the machines decide to send a cyborg called the Terminator back into the past to kill his mother Sarah before he's even born. And humans send one of their own to stop the Terminator before that can happen. That's Kyle Reese. And that setup leads us to the events of the film, with Terminator constantly being on the chase of Sarah and Kyle around Los Angeles. So the first thing that I want to say is that the aesthetics of the film, on the one hand, the dystopian war zones of the future, and on the other, the 1980s LA, are an excellent mix. Cameron uses mostly nighttime in LA as the setting for the story, which creates this unsafe feeling, and as a result, these two very different environments end up meshing really well. The plot, while simple, is executed well for a story that requires quite a lot of exposition. All the stuff about the war and the future and the time travel has to be explained to Sarah at some point. That exposition actually comes quite late in the film, and for a good half of it, Cameron prefers to show, not tell, to the audience at least. And the story is told visually in large part, which I always appreciate. And that story moves forward at a brisk pace, never really slowing down too much, but keeping the viewer engaged and on edge through a good mix of tension and thrill coming from this premise of unbeatable, unkillable villain chasing after the heroes. And of course, the action. The action sequences and special effects still look very good, thanks in part to clever editing and in part due to the fact that Cameron does not over rely on CGI. A good portion is visibly done practically, which means that it hasn't aged all that much and is still enjoyable even for a modern viewer. The only exception, I'd say, is the Terminator skeleton towards the end, which looks quite poorly now, but even so, still manages to evoke some degree of dread and that feeling of, holy shit, he's still coming after them. There's no way to kill it. So I'm pleased to say that the Terminator's position in the consciousness of cinephiles is much deserved. The film did not disappoint me. It is a well-rounded, competently made piece of cinema.